Good afternoon and welcome to the Leadership Learning webinar series. This series provides monthly learning on relevant business topics like today's topic, how to manage learning and development projects. I'm Carol Modlin, Senior Manager of Corporate Learning Solutions at Lake Forest Graduate School of Management. And we at Lake Forest Graduate School of Management are proud to be hosting today's program. Lake Forest is an independent accredited institution with over 50 years experience at providing practical business leader education. This education comes in the form of MBA degrees and other degree programs, certificate programs, and targeted training and development through our Corporate Learning Solutions programs. Corporate Learning Solutions specializes in developing corporate managers and leaders by combining relevant content with expertise of our business leader faculty to provide customized training, consultation, coaching, and organizational development services to our corporate clients. We are grateful for the sponsorship and generosity of our client and longtime supporter of the school, Trustmark and the Trustmark Foundation. Trustmark provides access to a full spectrum of flexible benefit solutions, including health benefit plan administration for self-funded employer groups, payroll-deducted voluntary products, group medical benefits, and health and fitness management programs. We are able to bring this webinar to you on a complimentary basis as a result of Trustmark's support. At this time, I'd like to take a quick moment to go over how we will interact today. During the program, you will be invited to participate using polls and chats and hand raises. If you have questions or comments during the program, please submit those through the chat feature. If you chat a question or comment, please sure to use the drop-down, which can be found right in this area where you can see my yellow highlighter. Use the drop-down of your box and make sure you select all attendees before submitting. Please make sure you are muted and that your video is off for the entire program. So now I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Willis Thomas, who is our faculty member. Dr. Willis H. Thomas teaches project management at Lake Forest Graduate School of Management. He is a PMP and is also a certified performance technologist who has been involved in organizational development and training in the pharmaceutical industry for the past 10 years. Willis has a doctorate in evaluation from Western Michigan University. And Willis has spent over 25 years in a variety of industries where he has been instrumental in maintaining regulatory compliance and supporting process involvement. Willis has invested more than 10 years on project evaluation and has a recognized global award-winning publication from PMI, the Project Management Institute. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Willis Thomas. Take it away, Willis.
Thank you very much, Carol. And I would like to thank all of the participants who invested time today to talk about managing training projects. So what we're going to be looking at in our discussion is some of the challenges managing projects, especially as they relate to learning and development, how training project management helps learning and development initiatives, and then we're going to talk about some lessons learned in managing training projects. So when you think about challenges in managing training projects, we compartmentalize these into 6 areas: cost, time, scope, quality, risk, and resources. And what we would like to know from you is what your challenges have been in the area of these 6 domains: quality, risk.
I'm sorry, go ahead. We do have a poll now, too. Should I go ahead and launch that?
Please. Thank you, Carol.
Okay. So I will be launching a poll in just a moment here. And when you see the poll come up, please go ahead and click your response in. I'm having a little bit of difficulty with the poll. Why don't you keep on going, and as soon as I get the poll to open, Willis, I'll go ahead and open that up.
Okay, great. Thank you, Carol. Okay, so first let's talk about cost. Some of us may have had specific challenges in the area of cost per seat. I know that that's one dilemma that when I've spoken to some organizations, they're real surprised with that. They're saying, well, you know, we're all at the same facility, for example, and we're paying for training based upon seats, and we're actually attending this training remotely, but the vendor that we acquired services from is charging us for the individual users. Sometimes we have challenges then in determining what the budget should be for training. So what we do is we look at the individual piece part pricing, which we refer to as bottom-up pricing, or we may use more of an analogous method, which involves historical records or lessons learned. The third challenges that we might experience is in the area of funds. We have reserve funds known as management reserves. These are set aside for known uncertainties. For example, we're going to be adding additional staff, or we're going to include more locations on an international basis, or there could be some contingency. So, for example, we have a new technology which has changed, and we weren't prepared for that, so we set up contingency funds.
And I have control over the polls now, so we also have a poll for this. So whenever you're ready, Willis, I can go ahead and launch the poll for this slide.
Okay, yep, let's do that now.
Okay, you should see a poll coming up. When you do, there are 4 options. Go ahead and click on the option. So I see some of you are clicking in. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and get those results, and then I will publish them so that everybody can see them. So again, how much control do you have over your own project budget? So a lot of control, some control, little control, or no control. I'm going to give this a couple more seconds. If you haven't had a chance to click in, please do so now, and then I'll go ahead and close the poll. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now, and then it'll be a few seconds. It'll be about 20 seconds while the software finishes the poll, and then I'll be able to publish that so you can all take a look at that. We've got a few more seconds, and then I'll publish that out. Okay. Okay, I'm publishing the results. You should be able to see the poll results.
Okay, and thank you for that, Carol. Okay, so we can see that some people have indicated 32% that they have no control, and another 30% indicate that they have some control. So if we take a look at item A there are, by percentage, not that many of you that have a lot of control of your training expenditures. So as we walk through the presentation today and we look at training project management, you're going to see some tangible tools that you're going to be able to use to be able to give you more control over your budget. And so also this will give you greater capacity for the number of training programs that you'll be able to implement. So thank you for sharing your response on that. The second item that we want to take a look at here is the time challenge. So after we're able to hopefully get full control of our budget, we look at the amount of time that we can invest. When we talk about time, we're talking about the work to be performed. So we're looking at instructional design activities, curriculum development, storyboarding. We look at sequencing. We're estimating the duration of how long each of these activities are going to be performed. And we're asking our subject matter experts to provide input, and we're using historical information from lessons learned. And then what we want to do is plan the schedule. And later in the presentation, we're going to talk about some tools that can simplify the process for creating things such as we see here, which is a Gantt chart. So we may use a network diagram, we may use a Gantt chart, and we want to be able to define the milestones or the key activities that need to be accomplished in order to ensure that our deliverables, whether these are instructor guides or participant manuals or e-learning programs, are delivered when expected. Third, we talk about scope. So when we talk about scope, we talk about the boundaries or parameters of the training project. We conduct a needs assessment. We do this in order to determine what the goal of our training should be, the learning objectives. We identify the learning activities to be included. So we may have certain on-the-job activities that need to be performed. So we create a training work breakdown structure, which helps us to determine who is going to be doing what. And we want to control the scope. And the reason for this is because stakeholders have a tendency that as they see a training program being developed to come up with other really creative ideas. And while all this is welcomed, we have to be careful to avoid scope creep. So we want to exclude additional requirements and set these aside as newly identified needs. And one way that we can do this is through formal change control. So the person can submit a change control, if we're using something such as SharePoint, to let us know that they have an additional group of users, for example, that would need to be trained. The next change that we look for is quality. Now, when we think about the triple constraint, initially it was cost, time, scope, and then quality was at the center of the equation, or the triangle. And quality means that we're meeting the stakeholders' expectations. So will it satisfy the learning objectives? It's essential that we clarify the training requirements, and we do this by analyzing job roles and descriptions. This is also referred to as role delineation study. And third, we want to conduct a performance assessment. So periodically, it's important that we measure the outcome of training. We want to look at, did it work? And we use different methods in order to determine the performance or the productivity of our learners. When we take a look at risk, one of the things that we need to keep in mind about risk is that it represents uncertainty. And risk can potentially be positive or negative. So a positive risk would essentially be an uncertainty that was not anticipated. So for example, we were able to get our learners trained before time. So I have experienced this, that we thought it was going to take 4 weeks, and then it actually took 3 weeks. So if the duration of the training is less than expected because we have performers which are mastering the subject content earlier, then we have to make a determination of what we are going to do with that additional 1 week. Do we put them in the job environment sooner? Do we add additional training? So that could represent a positive risk. A negative risk is an uncertainty that is unfavorable. So for example, the training took 5 weeks instead of 4 weeks. Now how are we going to recoup that additional time and that additional cost? So there are different ways in which we look at risk. We can look at it qualitatively as well as quantitatively, and when we look at it qualitatively, we begin by listing the risks. We want to calculate the unknowns. We use the probability by impact matrix, which helps us to begin to quantify the risks in our second stage so that we can start putting together different scenarios. And we also utilize other tools such as fishbone diagrams, our fault tree analyses, in order to calculate risks. So we want to plan the approach to deal with the risk, and we want to make sure that, especially in regulatory or compliance environments, that we have solutions which are going to meet the expectations of the stakeholders. We have the resources challenge. So resources, we look at the people, the systems, the equipment, facilities, materials, and supplies, and we think about short and long term how we are going to address these resources. So these items that we've looked at here, cost, time, scope, quality, risk, and resources, are recognized in the project management community, are published in the project management body of knowledge as competing demands and competing constraints. Next, what we're going to be looking at are some training project management and how this can help L&D initiatives.
If I could jump in before we move on to the next session. If anyone has any questions or comments from that opening session based on any of those challenges, feel free to send them into the chat, and we will be able to respond to those. Thanks, Willis.
Oh, thank you, Carol. Okay, so why training project management? So, you know, after I come, this little background that I'd like to share with you for a moment. You know, after at the time I was working for Pfizer Corporation in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I was an organizational development professional. And in 2004, I started working on my doctorate, and I joined the Project Management Institute. And I was the only one that was on the chapter board of directors that had a training background. Everyone else had a project management background. And what I brought to the organization was formal training methodology. And I started to have a passion around the integration of training and project management. So, you know, 8 years later, I completed a publication, which I'll share with you in a moment, but it essentially became a synergy between what was then the American Society for Training and Development, which is now the Association for Talent Development, and the Project Management Institute. We worked together to create a publication, which is now globally recognized. And so as part of my looking into this concept of training project management, I looked at the project management body of knowledge, which there are now 5 million copies in circulation. And there is a normal process by which we run a project life cycle. And so inherent in projects that we run are what we refer to as these 5 process groups of initiating, planning, executing, the oversight function, which we refer to as monitoring and controlling, and the closing. So when you run a project, you run through these 4 phases, and all while this is going on, we provide oversight or monitoring and controlling. And then there are these logical buckets, which we refer to as knowledge areas, and these are listed here as communication, cost, human resource, integration, procurement, quality, risk, scope, stakeholder, and time. And so we're going to further talk about how each of these helps us to formalize the process of managing training from a project management standpoint. Again, what we're trying to avoid with training is just getting a request, someone saying, well, this is a great idea, put the training together and can we have it tomorrow? Rather, what we're trying to do is have a formal process so that our investment in training can be realized and the expectations of the stakeholders can be clearly met because we have a plan. So as we look at each of these 5 process groups in 10 knowledge areas, I'm going to refer to the project management body of knowledge, which is the de facto standard on how projects should be run. Also, I'm going to reference the great work which has been done by Don Kirkpatrick and Jack Phillips. You probably know of Don Kirkpatrick in terms of the 4 levels of training evaluation. So level 1 is, did they like the training? We're looking for a reaction. Level 2 is a knowledge check or a quiz or a test. Did they learn from the training? Level 3 is behavior. We're trying to determine, did they use the training? Level 4, we're looking at results. Did the training have an effect? How did it impact the organization? And Jack Phillips introduced what is the training return on investment. I actually had an opportunity to attend his 1-week seminar on return on investment, which I also found to be excellent. So this provides the infrastructure then for what we refer to as training evaluation. So this is part of the equation. The second part of it is in the development of the training. Now this came from the military and it was developed more than 50 years ago, but it's referred to as the ADDIE model. Now there are other ones that have been introduced more recently by the Association for Talent Development, such as SAM, but just for the purpose of our discussion, the ADDIE model refers to analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. Now, in addition to what we see here, the third piece of the equation then that we want to address is the project management component. And so new for 2015 was this publication, Templates for Managing Training Projects, and this essentially became the synergy between project management and training. It's essentially a book of templates that were refereed worldwide, and people say this is what we need in order to implement training projects. It won the Global Apex Publication Excellence Award in 2016. So the framework for what we're going to be talking about then considers what you need to do from an ADDIE standpoint, what you need to do from a training evaluation standpoint, and what you need to do from a project management perspective. So first, let's set the stage by talking about how time-consuming is training. And I believe that there is a poll, or what I would like to do. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Carol.
Okay, so this is just a real quick poll. I just opened it up. You should be able to see it. And the question is, do you use project planning for your learning and development projects? So if you could just go ahead and click in there. Great, thank you so much to everybody. We're seeing a really quick response this time. Really appreciate the swiftness of your response. I'll give it a few more seconds and then I'll go ahead and close the poll. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, so if you want to give it one last opportunity to click. All right, closing the poll, and then in about 20 seconds I'll be able to publish it so that you can all see the results. Very interesting. I think you'll find this to be an interesting feedback, Willis. Some good fodder for discussion. So we've got about 5 more seconds. Okay. So now I am opening up the poll results. You should be able to see them there.
Okay, so the majority of people, Carol, here do use project planning, 42%, so that is good to know.
Yep.
However, 28% are not. So when we think that 28% of the respondents are not using it, the question is that we can probably assume is maybe it's too complicated, maybe they have not considered the benefits of doing so, or there may be other drivers in your organization that have not seen the benefit of formalizing project management for training. And so what I would like to do here,
yeah.
Sure, go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that if you're not using project management, if there's a particular reason for that, maybe you'd like to chat it in.
Yeah, so please share with us why project planning isn't being used. And so what we can see here on the slide in front of us is that, and this comes right from, the Chapman Alliance and our other studies that have been conducted by the Association for Talent Development, but how many hours does it take to create e-learning? So for 1 hour of e-learning, as you can see at the bottom of this reference, is that 125 development hours are required to create 1 hour e-learning program. If you were to develop instructor-led training, for 1 hour of instructor-led training, you're creating a lesson plan, handouts and workbooks and PowerPoint slides. It'll take you 43 hours on the average, or one week, to create a 1 hour course. So if you look at the cost of developing training and assuming that you're paying an outside vendor, anywhere between $100 to $200 an hour, then you might realize a cost of $4,000 to $8,000 for a 1-hour program. So this is what we're trying to do really, is get to the bottom line, and it will help us in making determinations then of when does it make sense for me to hire a training specialist, when does it make sense for me to go outside and hire somebody to develop the training, when does it make sense for us not to deliver that program or to integrate it into a future program. So this is why we want to do planning for our training projects. So the next question that logically proceeds is, when is a training project plan needed? So there could be changing educational needs of the staff. Maybe you're at the basic level for Microsoft Excel, but now you really need to get people more to advanced level in finance. Or there could be regulatory compliance. OSHA has new safety regulations. I was speaking to them this morning, and new advances, new concerns, new issues come up, and so there are regulatory compliance changing requirements. There could be complex systems, changes of versions of software, vendor-managed programs, or other collaborative initiatives. So when we're talking about just the one-off tasks, you need to reprint a manual. We're not saying that you need to develop a project plan for that. What we're saying is when your projects become complex, they become time-consuming, or you get your stakeholders to say, when is this going to happen, then project planning becomes a necessity. So what I put together is a part of my discussions with the Association for Talent Development. Again, the content here is refereed, which means that I put it out there for everybody to take a look at it and to give me some feedback. This is just an example of what you want to have in your organization when we talk about creating a training project plan. And so I'm going to walk you through this simple plan. You might want to create something similar, but this flow chart talks about identifying the training need, and you want to complete a training request form. So my lessons learned have indicated that whether you're using SharePoint or using a shared folder, or you may have an automated process through SharePoint where you have electronic forms using InfoPath, but you want to create a training request form so that you have traceability. An email also is suitable, or you can use Adobe Acrobat to create a form. Then you want to submit your training request form to the training team for review and see if a similar course exists or if one can be repurposed. So all the time we're getting in requests, this would be a great program, that would be a great program, but if something already exists that can be repurposed, does it exist in a different part of the organization? Is it something that's readily available on the internet that we can repurpose, redesign, provided it doesn't have any copyright, of course, and take advantage of existing material to keep the costs at a minimum. Then you want to go through your approval process. There should be governance within your organization that allows for the approval. After this approval process, we want to take a look at determining a training project plan outline. So create a very brief outline. This might satisfy the needs of your stakeholders. And then after creating our training project plan outline, we make a determination that a training project plan may be required based upon the scope, especially if this is a multi-site initiative. The training outline or project plan approval would be the next step. Your training governance committee would be essential for input into this process. This should occur before we involve our instructional design and curriculum development, whether that's inside the organization or outside. They should be ultimately responsible for producing these training deliverables. And what I always recommend as an initial step is when you're creating anything with a training project plan is to consider piloting the program or the course to a small audience. We want to be able to do this to ensure that the deliverables meet expectation. Then we want to make the course revisions based upon the pilot, as indicated in the lower left corner there. We want to complete the setup in our LMS, whether we're using sum total or plateau or compliance wire. And then we want to create the communication for the course offering. We make our course available to our end users, and it is always essential to conduct evaluation of courses. Now, when we took a look at the Kirkpatrick methodology, you know, we're not always going to do level 4 or level 5 on everything. We don't always have to determine what the impact was, nor do we have to determine the return on investment. But if we have completed our project plan, formal evaluation up and through level 5 becomes much more tangible. For courses that we have not created a formal project plan for, it will be much more difficult for us to do any level 4 or level 5 evaluations. So you may not think that you need it today, but tomorrow you might be asked by senior management in your organization, what is the return on investment for this particular program that we invested $100,000 in? And it's really nice to be able to give them a simple project plan, which this is simple. Regulatory compliance project plans are much more complex. So for example, for the past 6 months I've been implementing compliance wire on a global basis. The project plan for implementing an LMS has more steps to it. So you have to take a look at your IQ, your OQ, your performance qualification, your validation plan, your validation summary reports, and all the documentation that the FAA is going to want to see. So it would inherently have more steps in the process. And because it is more than $1 million investment over a 5-year period, it's really important to the organization that I had a very comprehensive project plan. Okay, so just like to pause for a moment and see if anybody has any questions on what we just covered before we talk about the role of the training project manager.
Yeah, Willis, we did get some feedback in through chat on some of the reasons that people don't use project management for their training programs. One, as you can probably see Casey's, she sent it to all participants. She says that there are insufficient resources, especially people, and too many other competing priorities, and they just need to get things done, which I can totally relate to that, Casey. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Willis?
Yes, absolutely. So probably what I would consider here is when we talk about, you know, insufficient resources, see if you can put this as an objective in the person's either job description or in their job requirements. So at the beginning of each year, the end of each year, we sit down and we talk to people about objectives. What are your objectives going to be for 2016 and for 2017? And by making it a part of their job description or their job responsibilities, then you have accountability. Until you have this assigned to somebody, you may not find that people just want to jump up and volunteer to do this. So it has to be an action item, and it has to be a responsibility of someone. When you're talking about too many other competing priorities, we have to stress the significance of project management in helping the organization to complete the training that makes sense from a compliance standpoint and from a quality standpoint. So there's a lot of, you know, programs that are suggested, there's a lot of things that are recommended, but when we talk about prioritization, we need to be able to define which training projects really had an impact on the organization. So it really is important when we talk about competing priorities to help to decide which of those priorities really made a difference. And then, yes, I agree with you about getting it done. By having training governance, a training committee, when I came to this organization, we established training committees. There were not any. And they started to see the benefit of people coming together for weekly training meetings to be able to address things such as safety and quality. And so training governance or training committee can be an essential part of you helping to get that done. Okay, so thank you for those questions, and if there are other questions, feel free to share those, and I'll be more than happy to address those as we proceed through our discussion today. So the role of the training project manager. Your title may not be training project manager, and I think that's one of the poll questions that we were able to address before is, who has project management responsibilities? And I'd like to be able to get that from you in the chat. One of the questions that I've been asked many times over the years is a lot about project management certification. We'll be looking at that here in a moment. But do you have project management responsibilities? And if yes, this becomes part of that natural flow. So
yeah, or maybe a quick way to do that would be, if you do have project management experience, just on your little icon bar, just give us a hand raise. So click on the raised hand and we'll see it next to your name, if you do have project management experience. And that will be on your participant panel. You should see a picture of a little hand. Go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, not seeing any hands go up. Oh, wait, one hand's going up. Okay, yeah, we've got a few people responding. Looks like maybe about a third to a half of the people are raising their hands, that they do have some project management experience. So that's a decent representation. Okay,
excellent. So let's talk a little bit about the role of the project manager. First, they want to be able to write and maintain these learning and development project plans. So we're talking about workflow, we're talking about working with subject matter experts, and we're talking about approvals. Second, they manage these competing demands, which we listed before: cost, time, scope, quality, risk, and resources. They coordinate the efforts of the project team. And then fourth, they support training deliverables. So here are some other questions that we have, and I know a lot of us are using different tools to create some outstanding training. I've listed some below: Captivate, Dreamweaver, if you're doing web-based stuff, Flash, Articulate, Storyline. Some of us may be using Adobe Presenter. So these are chat questions. And one of them that I would like to ask you is, what training and development tools are you using? If you could send that to me in the chat. What tools are you using? And this is kind of an innovative or innovation question, because some people say, well, our training seems to be flat. And, one of the things that we have on our charter this year is to make our training more exciting, more dynamic. So I've listed some at the bottom here just to give you some things to think about. And we're going to be looking at organization structure here in a moment. When we talk about organization culture, I break it down into three areas. I look at it as the learning organization. So you may be a technology company, you may be more like an Amazon. You heard about the great success of Amazon this morning on the news, on what they did yesterday with Christmas in July, right? You may be more like a Sony or a Microsoft. Then you have rules-based. These are companies that are regulated, so pharmaceutical companies, companies that produce food product, hospitals. Then you have bureaucratic organizational structure. And this refers more to law enforcement or educational institutions or government. So these are the three different types of organization culture, if we were to compartmentalize them. Then we talk about organization structure, and we're going to be looking at that in a moment. We're going to talk about how the role of the project manager can be positioned to optimally function from a training perspective, in other words, to get training done. Because sometimes there's bottlenecks that we experience, so we want to figure out how we can do a better job with that. So I'm just going to share a couple lessons with you for a moment regarding project management certification. And I understand that the majority of you have some experience in project management. But one of the things as an OD person that I've done for the past, 10 years working in this certification realm, and I created it for Pfizer and then rolled it out worldwide. And I've taught project management to more than 20 different countries in the past 15 years. And I've been certified since 2005. And the way that I have approached it is by developing levels of awareness. So this may be something such as a short webinar like we're doing here for a 1-hour program. Then it develops more into the familiarity, and then it gets more into the certificate, which I try to attach to tangible work experience. Then we move into certification. So I've worked with hundreds of people to get them PMP certified, for example. That's always been a big desire. And then the big thing that comes up is organizational project management maturity. So comparatively speaking, helping an organization to say we're going to run projects better, not just training projects, but continuous improvement projects, supply chain management projects, finance projects better, is inherently what comes back is training. So myself, I'm invested in all parts of the organization. Training is always part of the equation, regardless of what it is. If it's marketing, training is involved in it. So when you're positioning things such as projects, then you can be a very much needed contributor. So just to give you some factoids here that might be interesting, in 2004, when I sat down and I started working on my dissertation, and I met with the then Chief Financial Officer, who's now the President of PMI, Mark Langley, there was about 150,000 people that were project management certified. And since that time, there are now 800,000 people. And so for the past 10 years, project management has been the #1 sought-after competency and the #1 certification worldwide to pursue. It's just the hottest thing since sliced bread, and it's been so. So for people that are not certified project managers, what I try to do from a training perspective is to work with them to help them to envision which project management certification makes sense for them. The low-hanging fruit is usually the PMP, because that's the big seller, right? But the certified associate doesn't require extensive number of hours in training or project management knowledge. So, you can take up to 20 hours, you can have 1,500 hours of project experience, and it gives you a stepping stone to get your knowledge of project management where it needs to be. My experience and the numbers that I've been able to crunch has fully justified running internal programs to help people to become certified. And again, I'm talking about a training person being able to say that they want to have an impact to an organization. Project management has made significant enhancements across the business. So I'm going to share some lessons learned with you, some things that I've found that might be beneficial to you. And I'd like to take a look at this is that there's more than one way for us to get to where we're going, right? We can take a taxi, we can take a bus, we can ride a cycle. And there's different types of organizational structures we're going to look at here in a moment. There's functional, there's projectized, and there's what we refer to as matrix organizations, which are balanced, strong, and weak. And so the goal here is that we not only want to be efficient, but we want to be effective. So we have to have a balance. And in lessons learned, we want to look at things in terms of, did this go as planned? Did it not go as planned? And was there another plan that we could have considered? So we get good lessons first from our stakeholders. Our stakeholders are our competitors, our customers, our project team members, our sponsors, our suppliers, and our vendors. And we should constantly look at how we are getting lessons, what we are learning, and we need to centralize this information and make sure that it cascades through the organization. As Carol mentioned at the beginning of the discussion, you know, the Apex Publication Award was for the last book that I published in 2015, but my dissertation actually came by studying under Dr. Michael Scriven, and the book that I have been known by is the Cleveland Award, which came from the Project Management Institute. And so I've done significant research in this particular area, and I'm a strong proponent that organizations can continue to do a better job with evaluating their projects, getting your key stakeholders to sit down and really talking about these as a training initiative. This is an outcome of training. And so this is what I'm asking you to consider. Sit back and think about first, what kind of organization do you belong to? And at the end of presenting these 5 slides, we would like to find out from you what kind of an organization you're in. So the first kind of organization that you see here is a functional organization. Is your organization set up where you have an HR manager, you have a marketing manager, finance, IT person, and you have all of these different groups reporting up to your chief executive or your president? And then your staff looks like this. Well, project coordination then has a natural tendency to occur at this level, where you see that these functional managers are going to occur. So if they get a training project, this is a lot of times where the initiative is driven. Or does your organization look projectized? So projectized organization may look more like a consulting firm, where everybody seems like they're a project manager and they have staff reporting to them. Then the projects will have a natural tendency to be driven by these individual project managers working with their staff. Or does your organization look more like a matrix? Matrix is one of my favorite movies. I really enjoyed it. But this is the matrix that we're looking at here, where we have the functional managers and we have staff associated with them, but the responsibility ultimately for project coordination becomes by staff members across the different departments working together in order to make the training project a reality. In a balanced matrix, you are going to see the representation then of a project manager or someone who is defined as the training project manager working with staff across these different departments. And so that may be the solution for the balanced matrix. And in the final organization structure, we have what is called the strong matrix, where we have a project management department. We have a manager of project managers. And so one of the project managers could be the training project manager specifically, who is working across these different departments. So what we would like to know from you is, are you part of a functional organization? Are you in a projectized organization? Or are you in a matrix organization?
So if you could go ahead and chat your response in, we'd appreciate that. And when you do put your chat in, please make sure the drop-down indicates all participants or all attendees. Looks like we've got a couple of matrices coming in here.
Okay.
Three matrix, a couple functional. One question here, what is the difference between functional and matrix? Maybe if you could talk about some of the characteristics to help participants recognize the various types of organization.
Okay, so I'm going to step back just a couple of slides here. So when we think about a functional organization, think about logical departmental titles: customer service, legal, production, information technology, marketing. Then you have staff that are reporting up to these managers in these individual departments. So functional is departmental. Now, many organization structures have been moving to more of a matrix form because project management in and of itself, when you take a look at the foundation of it from the 1960s where the Project Management Institute was formed, it is now considered a profession, right? So there is a normal duration of time, which is normally about 20 years between something becoming a role and responsibility, between something recognized as a profession. So you can actually go now and see that project management is recognized. So the competency for project management then is something where when projects become of a certain financial magnitude or impact, they will designate a project manager to work on something. They'll have what they consider to be a project management professional or someone with professional competency in project management. So the drivers that you're starting to see more and more have project managers who can work across these different departments. So you're seeing that the majority of people now are working in a matrix organization. Previously, that may have looked more like a functional organization. So my lessons learned from working in both functional organizations and matrix organizations, and I worked in weak, balanced, and strong matrix organizations, is that certified project managers are a definite competency. There's just a difference between someone who has formally verified skills, the ability to create charters and RASIC and RASI charts and work breakdown structures and budgets and scope statements, someone who can actually create these deliverables, to someone who has working knowledge of it. And so if you're working in a matrix organization, if you are the defined project manager, you know, for a 3 to 6 month investment, you know, you can complete the Certified Associate in Project Management certification to strengthen your credentials in this area. This is not to say that you're not a great project manager because you haven't received certification. That's not all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that PMI has put together a good formal structure, and I know that Carol has been working very diligently at the Lake Forest Graduate School of Management to put together a robust program in project management, and very soon the school will have that program ready to roll out. And so, you know, it is just becoming a very necessary competency and certification for us to take a look at. So for training people that are running projects on a daily or a weekly basis, and I say daily because, you know, if you're generating charters and risk plans and communications plans, it really is beneficial to have that foundation so when people are asking for these documents that there's no question about what is to be produced, but they're produced with high quality. Okay, and so I welcome your feedback and your thoughts regarding that. So that's kind of my soapbox regarding the need for strong skills, strong competencies, and if at all possible, certification in project management for training professionals. Okay, so you may have heard of these terms here, summative and formative evaluation. As I mentioned earlier, I studied directly under Michael Scriven, and he's actually the creator of this, for those of you that have heard of summative and formative evaluation. And he created these back in the 1960s. And when we're evaluating things summatively, you know, we're looking at essentially three things. We're looking at impact, we're looking at accountability and results. When we're looking at things, sure.
Willis?
Sure, go ahead, Carol.
For some reason, I don't think your slide is advancing. We're still seeing, oh, there it goes. It just went ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So when we're taking a look at evaluation, and you're now tasked with project managers sitting in front of executive staff and they're saying, well, how well do we think this project went? And there's two ways that you can look at this, and this may be helpful. Now, in addition to what Kirkpatrick said, this is just a different way of looking at things. So summatively, we're taking a look at things from the standpoint of what was the impact this program had, who was responsible, so we're looking at accountability, and we're looking at results. You know, so did this improve productivity by 15%? We can also take a look at things from an evaluation perspective formatively. So here we're looking at change. We're looking at continuous improvement. We're looking at business continuity. And we have to keep ourselves in the framework of not just looking at things in the past, but also things in the future. Where are we going? What is the forecast for how we're going to improve our training? Otherwise, what happens with our training projects is they become old, they become stale. So hopefully this will provide an additional context of how to look at your training. Next, what logically follows is when we take a look at systems to support training project management. We talk about budgets, timelines, and resources. We've addressed that. The other things that become integrated into the training system, from my experience, are document management, knowledge management, and information management. In some organizations, these lines become blurred. I try to keep these separate because these are different initiatives. And from a knowledge management perspective, we may have databases and repositories. And from an information management perspective, we may have diaries and presentations. Another solution that is worth considering seriously is SharePoint. I've been utilizing SharePoint for many years, and it can be optimized to configure and capture training metrics. Now, this is in addition to what you may be doing with SurveyMonkey. As you know, that SharePoint does have a tool, and so what I would like to know in the chat is anybody using SharePoint for training? Anyone using SharePoint? I've built request centers. I've built forms.
So we're getting some
using
responses,
SharePoint.
and it looks like a lot of people are not using SharePoint.
Okay, good. Someone says that they had no idea that they could. Yeah, SharePoint is an absolutely fabulous tool. You know, not just for, you know, storing information, but actually for requests. So you get a request that comes in, you configure SharePoint to be able to take the request, and because it will handle all the metrics, it can tell you, you know, how long that request has been in queue, who the request was assigned to, and then you can actually look at things such as training performance. If we're not capturing these metrics, what happens is we have no way of tracking our training performance. We have no way of determining who is completing what deliverables other than to use a manual process. Now, SurveyMonkey, what I mentioned on that, just to address the question here in the chat, is that SurveyMonkey is also another tool that we use for creating surveys. I've also used SurveyMonkey to create quizzes. You can do that as well. But SharePoint has a survey tool which is built into it. So you may not need to utilize SurveyMonkey. You may find that SharePoint will serve those needs for you. And what I'll do is Carol, at the end of the session here, I'll be happy to provide my email should people have my Lake Forest Graduate School of Management email. Should people have questions, they can feel free to contact me, and I'll be more than happy to answer those, just in case I can't capture all the questions.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, here's my best secret for today. I'm going to ask everyone to take a look at this program. It's called Office Timeline It is a free download. It is one of the best kept secrets on the internet. It is a free plug-in for Microsoft PowerPoint that allows you to create high-quality Gantt charts. If you have seen this program, would you let me know in the chat window with a yes or a no? It takes about 2 minutes to install. And so what I would like to suggest is to take a look at this, because it is the initial key to helping your training projects have the appearance of professionalism. And what I mean by that is, when is the needs assessment going to be created? When is curriculum development going to be done? When is the storyboard going to be assembled? When are we going to get the graphics and the logos input? When is the narration going to be done? All of these things can be illustrated or depicted in a very attractive visual chart. And the best free tool on the internet is Office Timeline at officetimeline.com. So I'm right at 1 o'clock, Carol. I'd like to thank you.
Okay. And thank you, Willis, for a great session. Really appreciate you sharing your expertise. I would like to thank everybody who's been on this session, and we hope you've gotten some good information from today. I would also like to thank our sponsor, Trustmark. This session has been delivered to you by Lake Forest Graduate School of Management, as we have said, and it is an extension of our business management education, which is also part of our degree programs and corporate learning solutions. This program was made possible by our sponsor, the Trustmark Foundation, and again, our deepest thanks for their support. We value your feedback. Natalie Corrado, who put this program together, has just put in the chat box a link to an evaluation. Please go ahead and click on it and take this survey now before we close the program. We greatly appreciate it. It'll only take a couple of minutes to complete. We use this information to continually improve our sessions, so we do take it very seriously and appreciate your candid feedback. We will be having another session coming up on Thursday, August 25th at noon Central Time, and that session will be called Putting the Power of Collaborative Partnerships to Work, and that will be presented by one of our senior faculty members, Nicole DeFalco. So with that, we'd like to thank you for your time once again, remind you to please go click on the SurveyMonkey link in your chat box and complete our very short survey, and look forward to hearing from you next month.